nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to some amazing professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems. Basically, highlighting some different careers that you might not know are actually data related. Plus, we have fun bits, of course, because we're all nerds here and we love fun. So with us today, we have Albert Bellamy. How are you, Albert?
I'm doing well. How are you, Monica?
I'm doing very well.
I would say you undersold that music. I mean, you said the intro music was good. That was so dramatic. I was ready to shout, "Anakin, I have the high ground," and I thought this was some kind of movie scene coming in. Speaking of nerds having fun, there's my first Star Wars reference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I had so much fun picking out the theme for that. And because it's like
comic John book Williams stuff.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Because we have like a comic book theme type thing. And I was like, this sounds really serious. So I'm sticking with it.
Yep.
Speaking of the comic book theme, we typically start out the podcast with people sharing their origin stories. So could you please tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career?
Okay. Wow. Comic book theme.
Yes.
I kind of feel like I should have been...
Origin story.
Yeah. Bitten by a radioactive spider. And now I have these mad data powers.
Yes.
Origin story. Yeah. Well, then right before we started rolling, I was talking about why I go by Albert now. So that's a bit of an origin story. But so I really kind of had two dreams growing up, and I was a nerd who also had a big thing for military life and just playing war as a kid. And I really only wanted to do two things when I grew up, and that was blow stuff up and play with numbers. And so I'm sort of living my second dream now. I was a Marine for 23 years, and all of that was tough and amazing and terrible all at once. And then it became time to hang it up for a bunch of different reasons. It would probably be too boring for this podcast. But I was blessed, unlike a lot of service members transitioning, veterans coming out, they have to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life. And I knew exactly what that was. And I had angled myself through the end of my Marine Corps career to become a data analyst. I wound up getting my master's degree through a program that they put on. And so it was just a question of making it happen at that point. So I got through the whole orientation stage, and then through a couple of different great programs that the military offers, I managed to get an internship at Google without any of the horrible interviewing and intellectual rigor that normal people have to go through to get such a thing. So that's a different story. But yeah, I got a stint at Google. That was amazing. Worked at DARPA at the end of my military career. That was intense. And just had a chance to do some incredibly cool stuff. And then at the end of the Google stint, it was like, okay, well, let me pick a real job. And so the biggest thing I had to decide was, do I want to stay in the defense sector and work for a contractor in a data science or data analytics job, or do I want to branch out and go into, what we called the civilian sector? And I just decided I needed a break for at least a while from military life and supporting the military. Still support it as a member of the American Legion, support veterans and helping craft their resumes and coach them a little bit if they want to come into data. But I wound up in marketing analytics through an awesome connection that I made towards the end of my career. And that was a fantastic job. I got to work remote, companies in New York, and I got to stay here in North Carolina and give my kids some stability and give my wife some stability. And everybody got to keep their job. Everybody got to stay in school that they liked. And so let my kids finish out school. My baby boy just graduated high school on Friday, actually. And last Friday. Yeah. And so, yeah. And kind of built up this affinity for Alteryx that's led me to where I am today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you mentioned. You said that your childhood, you like to blow stuff up and you also liked data. How did those two play with each other?
How did they play with each other? I don't think I ever really got to do them together. I would say the only exception was, so I started out enlisted and I was doing logistics. And so it was called maintenance management. And so I was the guy that would prioritize work. And when we were repairing trucks or cannons or whatever pieces of equipment the shop was working on, I would track parts coming through the supply lines. And so that was a lot of analytics, and that was quite interesting. I eventually got kind of bored with that. And then I finished my degree and put in to become an officer. And so coming into the officer ranks, I had to choose a job again. Well, I decided I'd have had enough of logistics. And at the time we were building up in Iraq, eventually built up in Afghanistan as well. And so I said, well, I feel like I'm a relatively smart fellow, and I'd like to do something that involves some thinking, but I also want to fight for my country. And so I decided, well, that sounds like artillery. And artillery involves a lot of calculations, a lot of tactics and strategy. It's not kind of, go towards the sound of the guns and shoot back. And so that was pretty cool for me. I didn't get to do the mathematical end, the gunnery calculation end of it for very long, but what I did was very enjoyable. So I got exactly what I wanted out of it. But yeah, that was my combining data with blowing stuff up, was calculating gunnery solutions to artillery missions.
Okay, that makes more sense now. Thank you for sharing that. Also, how lucky were you to get an internship at Google? And how much exactly like the movie internship was it?
I'm sad to say I still have not seen that movie. So I think a mutual friend, Robert Sievert, he made a meme of me when I was working at Google with the beanie on and with the movie poster. So Robert likes to put my face onto memes a lot of the time. So I might have to dig that one up too. Now, I've never seen the movie. I hear it's pretty funny. I think a group of us were intending to watch it while we were working there, but never really made the time. We were all remote, so this was 21. So yes, like spring and summer of 21. So still very much COVID land, was only starting to wane a little bit. At the time, Google was almost entirely remote, and they were just talking about a return to work. So I don't know if they ever fully did that, but yeah, I was incredibly lucky to do it. They had just implemented the program when, as a matter of fact, I think there was only one cohort before mine when it's called the Skill Bridge program. And it's a program for military people transitioning out. If they have time at the end of their contract, they can do what amounts to an internship or an apprenticeship in various different programs. And so I was incredibly lucky to do that. Although I had several other really good prospects, I wound up picking Google and getting picked by Google. So that was a cool experience. But yeah, there were a lot of other companies that I was interested in and think were interested in me as well. So it's a great program, but yeah, very, very fortunate. I definitely talked to a lot of older veterans that said, hey, I really wish something like that was around when I got out of the Marine Corps in the 80s or so. Yeah, things get better.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like it's not really related to the movie then, because a lot of it was like free food and parties and stuff like that. So
yeah, we were not on location. Yeah, but it's funny. There were probably like 25 of us that went in that cohort, so we had kind of the same timing. And there were a couple that were really interested in eventually getting a job there, but most of us really were not looking to stay there long term or to get an interview. We were really just looking to get some experience there. And I knew they were returning to work. I had no intention of moving to Mountain View. Like I said, I really wanted to stay here and let my kids finish high school. And I know they're building, or maybe they've already built a center in Raleigh, Durham, but that's still 3 hours away from me. So
Okay.
yeah, it was not on location for Google, was not going to be in the cards for me. And so I was really kind of freed up by saying, hey, I'm doing this for 3 months and I'm going to get the most I can out of it. I'm going to make some connections. I'm going to learn everything I can learn. And then the last 4 to 6 weeks of it, it's time to go find the permanent job.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was very, very freeing, and they were super accommodating. I also caught a scorching case of the COVID Delta variant, like right towards the end. So I was borderline brain dead for like the last 3 or 4 weeks I was there, unfortunately.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, it was bad.
All right. So, where are you today? What is your title and what are your main roles and responsibilities?
Sounds funny to say roles and responsibilities. I really just have one. I am a
You don't
customer.
have several like everybody else in the corporate land?
Nah, really. I mean, I have multiple projects in the kind of the exact same vein, but there are so few of us that I kind of almost can't be multitasked, which is an awesome place to be in one respect. But so I'm a customer training instructor, and I was the first actual everyday instructor hired by Alteryx to teach our software to our clients. I was hired by an Alteryx ace who unfortunately is no longer with the company. She was let go in the reduction in force a couple of months ago, which is a super weird thing to have someone go and seek me out, bring me into the company, and then a couple months later she's gone and I'm still here. That, you want to talk about an awkward situation, that is definitely, that's up there. She is still a very good friend and she's going to be fine. She's got a wealth of experience, but yeah, that really interesting situation there for sure. But so she was hired as the manager. So I like to say I was the first instructor hired, although she was doing teaching herself.
Okay.
And then, so we only have 2 now. We're looking to bring in some more at this point, especially to teach these Middle Eastern and India Standard Time and Japan Time classes that are kind of a beast for either I or Chris, my West Coast counterpart, to teach. But roles and responsibilities are, I teach Alteryx at a variety of levels. And yeah, that's about it. I don't, thankfully I came in and I said, I don't do slides. Which, I kind of do slides, but no, I came in and they said, we've got a curriculum design department. And I said, you're singing my song, because I want to have input on the content. But if you're saying someone's going to build the content for me and all I got to do is get up on stage and do the tap dance, I am all about it. And so it really works very well, because I fell in on a built out curriculum of classes. And the only thing I really had to do was the speaker notes for the slides were written in there for the most part. And I went in and I said, hey, this is not how I talk. This is not how I teach. I'm going to change this. But all of the content was built out. So all of that kind of horrifying slide mashing time is gleefully done by people that actually enjoy that sort of thing. I despise it. And so all I have to do is get up there and say, okay, how many clicks do I have to trigger these animations? Cool. What am I going to say? What are my hand gestures? What is my vocal inflection? I can just concentrate on all the things that I find fun and challenging and interesting, and do none of the things that I find soul crushing and awful.
Yes. Which
is just an amazing place to be. In fact, I probably shouldn't talk about it quite so much, because somebody's going to hear it and be like, oh, really, fool? And then I'm going to get tasked with building stuff. But no, it's an amazing job. And just in the very brief, I got hired end of January. I've really only been doing serious work of actual teaching like March, April, May, and now we're halfway through June. So it's been a few months, and I've traveled, not terribly far. There was one trip to Toronto that I couldn't make, and so somebody else covered it. But they're talking about going overseas.
Mhm.
I've done an on location. Went to Vegas for Inspire, and all of these places, it's just get there, check into a hotel, get up on stage, and do the work.
Yeah.
And that's like, I couldn't ask for anything better.
Awesome. Well, since we already mentioned Inspire, that's part of our fun bits that I wanted to get into. Okay, so let's transition.
Yeah.
So with Inspire, your main role was to go there to give classes to the attendees, right? So
Yep.
can you tell us a little bit about that experience on the teaching side? And then also I want to know about, being an attendee yourself and kind of like the fun part too. But let's start with, how was it teaching the people in real life for a while?
Yeah, teaching was amazing. So for people that haven't been, the structure of the thing is it's 4 days. So it's Monday through Thursday. Monday and Tuesday, the bulk of it is lessons for Alteryx users. So you show up Monday and Tuesday and you schedule, there are 4 sessions a day, and they're all an hour and a half or 2 hours in length. So you do 2 morning sessions, you eat lunch, you do 2 afternoon sessions. Or you can, not do that many. That option is available to you as well. But for the instructors, a lot of us going in, we're supposed to have 2 or 3 sessions to teach. Well, one thing led to another, and a couple people got trimmed from the trip. And then one instructor said, this class, I'm not terribly comfortable with it. And I just say yes to everything. So they kept saying, can you teach this class? Or this class you were supposed to teach once, now we have to schedule it a second time because it's in high demand. And so what it added up to was, I went from, I think, 5 teaching sessions to 7. I mean, 5 was a pretty good load anyway, but I only had one of the sessions off. So I wound up teaching almost 1,200 students, which was incredible, which is a wonderful experience. But it was also, there were trying experiences as well. There was a class that I taught on regular expressions, and I taught it both days. And the first day, there were some mistakes. There was an error in the way that I was teaching the students to parse it out. There was, and from what I could see, it was good, but one of the students noticed that this regex expression doesn't work for these. There were like 1,000 lines of data, and they scrolled down, they found a couple lines where it didn't get the string that we were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mortified. And so we kind of worked through it, and we figured out sort of a solution during that class. I was apologizing profusely. I was sweating. Yeah, I'm talking like flop sweat, like I was wildly uncomfortable. I had so many people after that class come up and tell me what a great class it was. It got a stellar rating. And I had people coming and singling out the fact that, hey, we found a mistake. That happens. And as a class, as teacher and students, we worked through it. And they thought that that experience was amazing. The next day I came in to teach the class, and in my attention gainer, I said, I'm going to tell you, the solution that you have, that you've downloaded, that workflow, there's a mistake in it. And we found it yesterday, and I'm going to show you what it is. And I went home after that first day of classes and worked on it. And the patch that we had figured out in class wasn't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured out a solution that worked in all instances and came back in and taught that the next day. And so that was just super rewarding, that I realized, hey, there are times when I think I'm failing wildly, and that may only be kind of in my own head, that my perception of it is miserable, but it's actually a good thing.
Yes.
So that was intense. There was another class I had to take over fairly close to the conference because another instructor didn't feel comfortable with it. And that class went swimmingly. on some concepts that I had to kind of school myself up. There was a bunch of very deep statistics in there, some correlations that I hadn't really studied since graduate school. And so a lot of that was just a very rewarding experience getting those things ready and doing the preparation, coming in, delivering them. We got great feedback. I was one of the higher rated instructors. I taught the most students out of anybody. And so, yeah, it was just everything about it was a positive in the end run, especially from those first 2 days. The third and fourth day, at the end of the second day, is when the convention starts. So they let everybody in. It's called Alternation, and they have a bunch of events and speakers, and that's when all the influencer stuff started kicking off with Kate and Dustin and all of our friends. And so it was amazing to meet all of them in person, to meet Steve Nuri, to meet Kirk Bourne. I'd never met any of these people before. I feel like I know them just from, other than Kirk Bourne, who I wasn't connected with before, but I feel like I know them just from talking to them on LinkedIn. But then it's one of those people that you meet in person, you're like, have we ever met in person? I don't think we have. It feels like we have, but
right.
So that was really cool. Got to go out to dinner with Kate. Unfortunately, had to leave after the second day, but I got to go out to dinner with Steve and Susan Walsh. That was amazing. Just having a captive audience of Steve Nuri and Susan Walsh and just listening to the stuff they talk about is like, I don't even need to talk. I just want to listen to you.
Right?
Yeah.
Susan's fun. She's the only one out of the clique that I've met in real life.
Awesome.
And she's real fun.
Yeah. But and so the Wednesday and Thursday is all of the keynote speakers, the events. They call them sneaks. So they have people come in and they've developed these kind of mega hacks of things that you can do with Alteryx. So they've built these insane apps that do all of this crazy stuff, that organize workflows better, that there was somebody that had built a ton of stuff with generative AI in there. And then Alteryx unveils their new developments on that last day. So they unveiled the Mavericks program, which is the reboot of the Alteryx community and all of the training that's on there. They talked about Aiden, the generative AI program that we're running, all of the like small technological tweaks that are going on with Designer and Designer Cloud and all of the various, it feels weird that it's just exploded so much in the time that I've been using it and then working with the company that it's gone from desktop only to Designer Cloud to insights to machine learning to all of these cloud-based capabilities.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy what they've built, but had a bit of a hangover afterwards. Not an actual like alcohol hangover, but just an emotional like you work towards something for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's this amazing, intense experience, and you're in this glamorous location, and you're running around with all these cool people, and then you come home and you're like, it's just life again. So
did you sleep for a week? I would be exhausted.
I didn't. So I don't sleep as much as the average bear. I tend to get up really early. So I think I've reached that stage of old man living super early. I don't think people in their 40s don't generally do that, but I think that's usually like 60s and 70s, but I'm there.
I'm starting to get there as well. I'm up pretty early, or at least early for me, and I'm like, why am I not still sleeping? What's going on? What a buildup, though. You said that they didn't do the reveal until the very end of the conference. They have to like wait around the entire time for the reveal
of the innovations. Yeah, that's always on the last day. So Thursday morning they do this insane production. I actually couldn't, because I was working in Alternation in the booth for our department. I couldn't get in there to see the whole pyrotechnics and all of the crazy presentation they had, but I understand it was pretty intense. And they revealed Mavericks and Aiden and all that stuff. But there's stuff going on every day. So the theatrical aspects of it, it's a kind of a slow build. The first 2 days they don't really do much of that. It's all about the clients, the users, and getting them training, getting them through sessions,
Okay.
schooling them up a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense. Speaking of schooling, you mentioned that there was one last minute change where you were asked to give an additional course. So I wanted to ask, like, what is your process for like how you learn new things?
Wow, it has evolved tremendously just over the time I've been in data. I'm much more procedural than I ever was before.
Okay.
And I have learned a lot of people will kind of poo-poo paid programs and curated content. I'm kind of a big believer in it. The thing that gets me is knowing when to cut bait and bail on something that's not working for you. Early on, I definitely stuck with some programs I won't name, but there were definitely e-learning platforms that are big money, big name e-learning platforms. And I got on them and I was just like, okay, well, I've got a bunch of friends that swear by this. And I was just working. And it took me weeks or even months and not tons of money, but just subscription-based services that after a couple of months, I was like, it doesn't feel like I've learned anything. And I had to learn to just try something for a little bit and just say, if this is not rewarding and engaging, life's too dang short to keep going and keep nose to the grindstone. And that includes, you got to let go of the sunk cost fallacy. You pay for a course and you start playing with it and it stinks, just bail. Like, it doesn't matter if you spent $200 on it. Like, that $200 is gone. And if you compound the loss by driving yourself crazy doing something that you don't like, it's only going to be worse. You're not going to validate the spend. So I had to get good with that. But in most cases, I think you get what you paid for. And so it's kind of in vogue now to talk trash about this high price boot camp or that, or all of the information is available on YouTube, or sure it is. What you pay for is content curation and supervision. And that's the thing that costs money, because time is money and you only get 24 hours in every day and there's only one of you. So if I curated a community once upon a time and that took up a ton of my time and there was no money in it, initially I wasn't intending to monetize it. And then once I realized that might be a good idea, I couldn't figure out how. And so eventually it just became to be too much of a time suck, and LinkedIn kind of crushed it. So I just said, hey, we're finished with this.
Yeah.
But those communities take time. They take a ton of energy. And if it's not highly monetized, you're kind of giving your time away for free.
Yeah.
And so when you pay for a person to go one-on-one with you and give you a coaching session, when you pay for somebody to monitor your progress and say, hey, catch up, you're behind on your homework assignments or anything like that, you're going to pay. It's not cheap. People's time, especially experts' time, is not cheap. And I don't consider myself an expert, but people running these programs for the most part are. And so, if you're paying for, Avery Smith's program, like Avery Smith is going to get paid. So it's not going to be free. It's going to cost some money. Now, his is not expensive by any stretch, but just paying for that person's time is going to cost something, and paying for their energy in curating and producing content is going to cost something. Sure, you can find it on YouTube, but you're also going to waste a ton of time trying to figure out where the good YouTube videos are and trying to keep yourself on track if you don't have this iron discipline to curate your own course of study. And so all of that, I am a big fan of finding a good course that may or may not be a paid course and just sticking with it once you realize that you don't hate it and you're actually learning something from it.
And what do you do to apply your learnings? Like, what are your favorite things?
I'd say I probably reverse engineer that a little bit. I don't think a course is not going to keep my attention
Mm.
if it's not something that I'm applying consistently.
Okay.
And I think that's a large part of why I can't stay consistent with learning code languages, because I've never been in a position where they were required at work. And I've never been in a position where I got very close to getting hired as a data scientist almost entirely because I have a security clearance and it was a cleared position. And so I was faced with a daunting task of I need to upskill my code ability rapidly, like spend every waking hour learning to code. I wound up that it was either that job or Alteryx. And so I wound up picking Alteryx. And so, yeah, the side benefit of that, I got paid more at Alteryx. It's a remote position, more flexibility. So there were a ton of reasons to pick Alteryx. But I did have that kind of nagging pull. It's like, it says data scientist right in the title. That's kind of sexy. And I eventually I looked at it, and there were many reasons to choose Alteryx, and those are the reasons I chose Alteryx. But one of the fringe benefits was I don't have to put myself through an insane Python boot camp just to show up at work and not look like an idiot. And since then, I've kind of always said, oh, well, let me keep plugging away, keep learning Python. And me being me, the way I am, if it's not something that I'm getting paid for at the 9 to 5, if it's not something that I can turn into a side hustle quickly, I'm not big on volunteer work unless it's for people that I innately care about, like the veteran community. So, and even for myself, I'm not big on academic work for the sake of academic work. I want it to lead to something. So I'm reading books to become better at running my side business. I'm, working on Alteryx certificates so that I can teach better and so I can become a higher credentialed instructor. Those are things that lead directly to a paycheck and me earning something, me accomplishing something of note. Yeah, doing something for the sake of an academic exercise, it just has never appealed to me.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense because you have a goal in mind. You have something that you want to achieve. So you'll do anything in those means to reach that.
Yep.
Awesome. Now, do you have any final words of encouragement or recommendations for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of have resumes on the brain right now.
Okay.
I'm doing a project where I'm helping a bunch of people revise their resumes, and I'm trying to, I offer that as a coaching service. I'm not charging this cohort because this is all about me just refining my skills. And I think the thing that if I could Vulcan mind meld with everyone out there in the data universe, it would be, I'm not a Star Trek guy, but I will drop a Star Trek reference.
Love it.
Star Wars is infinitely superior, but I digress. If I could convey this to everybody out there, stop limiting yourself in your language. And I know that as a fellow word nerd, you are absolutely in the tank for this. Stop limiting yourself in your written and verbal language. And verbal is tough.
Yeah.
People write their resumes giving credit to people that are not them. They reference teams that they were on. They reference, oh, I supervised this, or I coordinated and directed this. All of that minimizes your contribution. It takes you away from the source of the action. It spreads credit to people that are not there. So I would say have confidence in yourself and convey that confidence in your communication style. Practice interviewing. This goes beyond the resume, but you write the resume. Writing a resume as a confident person, that's not that tough because you're sitting there, you can revise it 50 times and you can write it as if you're Superman. It's much more difficult when you get in that interview room and somebody pokes you in the chest and says, what about this resume bullet? Explain that to me. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first words out of your mouth was, well, all I did was basically what actually happened. All of these things serve to minimize the accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to watch. You don't even realize how many times you say, I just, or I only, or all it was. When you say what actually happened, I had a client do that this week. What actually happened, did it over and over. And I said, every time you do that, you cast doubt on your words and you cast doubt on your accomplishments, and you're minimizing yourself because you're essentially saying, I was lying before. What I said was this, but what actually happened was that's what people hear. And so you've got to take credit for everything that you did. You've got to take credit for things that other people did, as long as you were on the team, because the team's not there interviewing, you are. So nobody is hiring the team. They're hiring you, or they're not hiring you. And so what the team did, you did, and the team will all applaud if you get that job, even if it's in part based on their work. So don't minimize your contribution. Don't minimize the things that you did. And then the last thing I would say is uncouple your emotional attachment to the hard work that you did, because it doesn't mean anything. It won't get you a job. People don't hire for hard work. They hire for results. So you want your resume and your conduct in an interview for a data position, be data driven. You're a data professional. Talk about the data. What did you do in numbers? I drove a 10% increase in revenue during Q1. That's data driven. That's amazing. People, they'll be throwing jobs at you. But when you say that, here's how I did it. Here are my processes. And I was the one responsible. I received this accolade. I was employee of the month. Talk about accomplishments, not activities, and just own your own accomplishments and write a resume for the employer. It's not for you. It's not a summation of all the things you worked super hard on. And to just uncouple your emotions from it. Veterans are terrible at this, because we all know just how much blood, sweat, and tears we put into the things that we did. And I'm not even talking about military speak that no non-military person understands, because we're terrible at that too. But we're really terrible at, we give credit to a team because we're all about team. We give credit to other people other than us. And then we talk about grind, and we talk about every day I came in, I turned the lights on, I answered my emails, and I served the coffee. Obviously exaggerating, but I showed up every day and led formation. I taught this many classes. I had this many students. None of that plays. What plays is I moved the needle this much. I accomplished this mission in this fashion. I increased this KPI. I decreased work hours or costs or something. And I will make your company money if you hire me. That's what the resume should say. And so the most work that I do helping people with their resumes is I say, get rid of this bullet. But why? I worked so hard on it. I know, but it doesn't matter. So that's what I would say. Take credit for your accomplishments. Talk about accomplishments, not activities. And just decouple your emotions from how hard you worked, and think about what's going to earn you a job, or at least an interview.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Albert, for coming on the show. If anybody has any questions for you, where can they find and/or follow you?
You can follow me. So I am a LinkedIn guy. I do dabble. I dabble in other social media. Anyway, so I am also on Instagram. Major data in some form is the hashtag. But if you search for my name, you'll find me. I am also on Instagram. I am on YouTube. I would say I am LinkedIn first, YouTube second, and then Instagram is something amusing at times. But yeah, I am a LinkedIn first person. So come look for me, Albert Bellamy, and bring your question.
Very responsive on LinkedIn. So
sometimes to my own detriment.
Yeah.
Going back to that, there's only 24 hours in the day thing, but
yes.
sorry, I can't resist.
All right. Well, thank you so very much again for being on the show, Albert.
Thanks for having me.
And as always, folks, happy learning.
See you, everybody.